Hello, everybody. Hello. Thanks for tuning in. So, as you can see, I'm back at the office after a long stint of being away. I am finally back at the office. Did a little cleanup, did a little organizing of the taxes, all that fun stuff. So I want to just start by talking about a couple of remote views that I have had over the last couple of days. And then after that, I decided that I would go ahead and do a tarot card blitz from here in my office. So it's interesting. When I go into the remotes, the first person that I want to talk about is talk a little bit about the energy in the Senate right now. It feels to me like a tidal wave, as if everybody in the Senate, everybody in Congress is trying desperately to win re-election. They're all kind of dealing with the disaster that is their own campaign. And in the middle of all of that, you have a series of problems taking place all at once. You have the pandemic. You have a collapse of infrastructure. There's a lot of collapse of infrastructure in Michigan. Whether it's, they seem to have issues with water, whether it's contaminated water, breaking dams, battles between the GOP and the Democrats. This is why last week when I was scanning, I did the classic remote viewing technique. A couple weeks ago, I kept saying Michigan, Michigan, Michigan. Keep your eye on Michigan. I think we shot that about 2 weeks ago. And sure enough, we're going to keep seeing Michigan is just a hot spot this election. But what it really feels like, and I would be curious to hear what the other remote viewers have to say about it, is just this incredible feeling like literally the dam is breaking and everybody is trying desperately to survive. Whether it's the Senate re-election or Congress or whatever seat, there's just this feeling it's every man for himself as the boat sinks. Within the Senate, there's a feeling that the presidency was supposed to be like a public personality that was supposed to entertain and rile up the troops, while the GOP was able to get their work done promoting their agenda. And so the feeling within the Republican Senate is that the president was given one term. This is something that I kept feeling when I went into the energy. This president was given one term by the Republican Senate, and then they would reassess this president after the first term. There was a lot of reservations about Donald Trump becoming the GOP candidate for the Republican Party. So what appears to have happened is that they, against their better judgment, decided to give this president one term, and they may throw in the towel on the presidency if Joe Biden is the nominee, and it looks like Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. So when you go into that energy, it looks like Mitch McConnell gave one term to Donald Trump, and that we will start to see a shift in the Senate with Biden as the presumptive nominee. So now they've lost, their feeling is that they've lost the presidency, so they're going to try and save the Senate and Congress. Now, there could be some backdoor deals, some private deals going on between Biden and the GOP that people probably should be aware of. And that is that there could be secret conversations between Republicans and Democrats about who they want to see as the VP pick. And that's because many wonder whether or not Biden will be able to complete this term or if he'll be running for a second term. And so private conversations are happening. If you want to know who the Republicans would like to pick as the VP pick, it's probably going to be Amy Klobuchar, and that's because they know her in the Senate. They think of her as being a lot like Joe Biden. She gets along with everybody. She gets along with Republicans, etc. The feeling I got going into this energy was that we're going to see less obstruction from the Senate if we go with Amy Klobuchar than if we went with Elizabeth Warren. If we go with Elizabeth Warren or some other progressive, we can expect to get more opposition from the Republicans, which brings up an interesting conversation for Democratic strategists, and that is, do we make progressives happy by putting a progressive in with Joe Biden and run the risk of strong opposition by independents and Republicans, or do we pick Amy Klobuchar so we can get through the front door by appealing to poor working class Americans in the Midwest? So it felt to me going into the energy that if Biden picks Amy Klobuchar, he will have a much easier time winning the election than if he were to pick somebody that Republicans and independents have a problem with, like Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, or some other progressive. So the next remote I did was on Lindsey Graham. And the feeling with Lindsey Graham is, it was an interesting vision of him. I had a vision of him drinking, actually. And it was kind of like sitting at a bar talking to somebody about their life. And in this remote, he was drinking, and the first thing out of his mouth in the remote was that Lindsey Graham said, "I have no idea why I got involved in politics in the first place." He's very disillusioned with politics. He says that he got into politics because he thought he was going to do some good, but he's not sure he's done any good at all. Anything he's done has made much of a difference since he has served in the Senate. There's a feeling now of just a real moral decline, but also morale is really low in the Republican Party. And I don't know if Lindsey Graham can come out of this intense depression and a feeling that it was all for naught. That's basically the best way to describe Lindsey Graham's feeling about the coming elections. All right, so I'm going to do some blitzes now. I don't do as many live shows as I used to, just because we have a problem with trolls and it's exhausting and it's not fair to the audience. So that's why I've been taping lately. But I just want to go ahead and look at what is going to be coming for us and for the country in the coming weeks. So let's do a simple prayer, and then we'll go ahead and do some blitzes. I want to call on white light protection for myself and my viewers as we ask permission from Spirit to access the Akashic records. We call on our spirit guides and good angels to be with us. Give us the clarity and the wisdom that is needed to empower our viewers to make the best decisions for themselves, their families, for the planet, for the people they love, and to help those they have strife with. And together we say, Amen. All right, let's go in. What is going to be with our next couple weeks here in the United States? I just want to check the United States, and then we'll do everybody else. Where we are right now as a country, we get our wish, and we're coming into our power. You can see the 12th card, which is the base or the summary, is the wish has been granted. The energy we have to push through is the 11th house. If you're doing a 12 card read with two cards as bases, the 11th, the card under the 12th, is the energy that has to be pushed through in order to achieve the goal. And then the 9 of Cups, Magician and 9 of Cups. I actually want to talk a little bit about this because this is something that's come up a lot in previous remotes and in the meditations that I've had in the past, and that is that we have been blinded to just how powerful we are as individuals. It's almost as if Americans have been brainwashed into believing that the corporations are in charge, that we're helpless, that we have no power, and we really kind of have to snap out of it. It's a feeling as if we in the United States, but also in Britain and in other countries, are faced with the fact that we are being told a false narrative that we don't have power over the type of country that we are creating for ourselves. The wish card comes in, but it also is the magician card. And so the takeaway here is that we have the power to transform and create any kind of nation we want to, but we have to get organized. We have to come into our power, the magician, take responsibility for ourselves and the country we want to create. But don't underestimate our power. The Magician is about recognizing that we have the tools on the table right now to create the kind of country that we want to. We have underestimated the power of the individual, and we have underestimated the power of the voter. We have far more power than we've been led to believe. That's the first thing. The Queen of Swords comes in. It's an interesting card. It's a card that talks about the ability to put the past behind you. It's an older female. We've talked about this. It's the energy of the crone or the wise woman who picks her battles. What I like about this archetype, the Queen of Swords, is that she's older and wiser. Also, she doesn't have time for petty people. She's somebody who's very actualized and simply goes about their business, so to speak. Negotiations. There's a real maturity. That's the best way to describe it. A real maturity about where we as a country need to go. It goes back to the remote about what happens if Joe Biden picks Amy Klobuchar as his running mate, because she's liked both by the GOP and by Democrats. That would probably be considered strong strategy from the perspective of the Queen of Swords. And the reason why it's considered a strong strategy is because it's putting emotionalism aside and just thinking in terms of what's the strategy that's going to allow us to win, regardless of how we may be emotionally responding to it. How do we get in the front door? How do we get Democrats into the front door? That's the Queen of Swords. She's not the emotional Queen of Cups whose decisions are being made predominantly by her emotions. This is a seasoned queen whose wits are about her. What is above us? I think we have a lot more grief to go through, in the sense that we still have the same challenges politically. We're still bound to the same politicians. Nothing has changed. This feeling that we are still tied or trapped by our circumstances, but it's the circumstances that we have collectively placed ourselves in by choice, either by not voting or because we voted for this Congress. This feeling that we get the Congress that we vote for, or we get the policies that we vote for, if we don't come together collectively and work to create a better alternative. We are trapped by our choices. Everyone seems to be coming onto the same page, and that is this feeling of defending the land, and defending the land against predation. The Seven of Wands I think of as an environmentalist card, because it is the defender of the land, but it's also to defend when one has been attacked or when one's territory has been attacked. So I think that there's also a collective feeling in the community, amongst many Americans, that we are going to have to defend against people that may not have our best interest at heart. And unfortunately, a lot of them work in DC. A lot of them work in DC, excuse me. The best way to describe the energy going forward in the coming weeks for America is just a clarity of thought, a clarity of vision, and a clarity of purpose, in the sense that the Nine of Pentacles is to be confident, to sit in confidence in one's own garden. There's the female power symbol on her dress. I don't know if anyone has noticed that when you look at this card chart. I think that this is not a time for Americans to be emotional. This is a time of practical decisions, being temperance, sobriety, sober thoughts about how we can come out of this how we can come out of this difficult challenge and begin to make solid decisions about the future of the nation with our head on our shoulders. That's basically how I would interpret this reading. We're going to come out of this disaster by recognizing our own power and working collectively to change things. Our head is about our shoulders. That's the best way to interpret it. I want to access records on Trump because Trump's kind of shell-shocked. That's the best way to describe it. All right, so remember when we had done a remote viewing on Melania Trump and she had said that you must never correct Donald Trump because if you correct him publicly, he'll be your enemy for life. He will never forget it. If you publicly embarrass him, for example, when Barack Obama made some jokes about Donald Trump, even before he was running for president at a correspondence dinner. After that, Trump never forgot the slight by Barack Obama, and he went after him. That's really Donald Trump. He can never forget a slight, and if you correct him publicly, you're going to face consequences. And so, consequently, anybody who's corrected him or shamed him publicly gets fired, right? And then he has to go and get somebody else in there. So the shell shock I get for Donald Trump is that he's shocked at how many Republicans in Congress are not helping him right now. They're not helping him because tying themselves to him is tying themselves to a lost election. So they need to pull themselves away from him, start to act like they can work with Biden, they can work with moderates in order to save their elections. Because people like McSally, people that doubled down and supported this president are going up in smoke. So I just want to look at the future of Donald Trump because I think he really is shell-shocked. He can't believe that the Republicans are basically saying to him, we decided to give you one term, and now many of us are going with Biden. So now they just have to work out who the VP pick is. If they get their VP pick, Amy Klobuchar, as soon as she's nominated, if they get what they wanted, this guy's under a bus. So we have to decide as Democrats, how fast do we want this guy under a bus? If we want him onto the bus as quick as possible, we're going to be at peace with Amy Klobuchar as his pick. That's basically in a nutshell. If you want to keep fighting the lunatic in the White House, then we can pick somebody like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, and then this bloody nightmare will continue on, and they will fight to the bloody end. So that's basically how they're feeling. All right, what are we doing, Trump? Let's take a look. Yeah, it's just a feeling of being shocked. Like, where did everybody go? Stopped over the end. You can see his 12th house is the Knight of Pentacles, which goes nowhere and refuses to listen, by the way. This guy cannot be taught. He cannot be trained. He's not the actor. If you hire an actor to play the role, then you have to be able to take an adjustment as an actor, right? Okay, we need you to adjust. He's having a real hard time with that. Two of Swords. He is someone who refuses to change, and consequently, you can see the end is near. His stubbornness cost him the presidency. That's the best way I would interpret that. Let's go in now. What is over him? The Fool card. Walking away. There's a feeling that if people cannot give him the attention and the support that he enjoyed, this is the shell shock for Trump that I was talking about, the energy around the end of this presidency, which I saw around April, May of 2020. So we're there now. So any additional time he spends in the White House, I kind of see it as borrowed time. But again, we keep getting the same cards, April, May, for this president, walking away from a battle he can't win. He did it his way. The Fool took a leap of faith. He was overconfident, but his refusal, right? His refusal to work with people signals the end. What is above him? Working nicely with others. Also, he's perceived of as lacking a basic kind of an empathy, which is required if you're going to be the president. Yeah, this guy, look at that. Look at his third house, 4 of Cups. Refuses to change, refuses. I always see that they give him the honor of resigning. They would love to get Pence in there, have him leave. Something about an offer here. They are trying to negotiate a new strategy for him The best that they can do with Donald Trump right now is to negotiate a new strategy with him about how to campaign during the time of COVID and whether or not he can make those adjustments, because if he can't, he's going to be slaughtered in the next election. They're trying to work with him. They're trying to create some kind of new way for him to run, but he's losing financial support and endorsements left and right. He can stay and fight the good fight if he wants to, but the truth of the matter is that the best way to describe this is that the GOP is done with him because he's not a winning strategy anymore. Washington, D.C. is not a romantic place. There's no love lost here. They went with Donald Trump. They had a lot of fun. They partied hard. They got a lot of what they wanted, but he's probably going to get, I think the poll taken that he would get 35% of the vote if he ran against Biden right now. So the writing's on the wall, and they just basically are going to dump him and try and save their own candidacies and try and desperately work with Biden to see if he can't pick a moderate for VP. That's what seems to be going on secretly. All right, I want to check on Boris Johnson because I've been asked a lot by people who are worried about Britain, about what's going on with COVID there. And I also want to just check to see how Boris Johnson is doing. Working on new contracts and new deals regarding business. This is something that came up because of what's happening right now with the virus and with Brexit. They're having to create new contracts or new deals, new ways of doing business because the old contracts are over. I feel like he's happy. I feel the thing with Boris Johnson is that if things are good in his family, in his life, then he has a real hard time empathizing with the average person in the world. He doesn't understand. He will do things based on how well his family's doing, how well his friends are doing, and doesn't appear to have any understanding of how people are doing outside of his little group. There's a real feeling of isolation here in these cards. He's going through a lot of what's going on with Donald Trump, but to a lesser degree, in the sense that I feel like there's an abandonment here of his policies, particularly by people who are older, who are members of the Tories. There's a feeling of suspicion about Boris Johnson from other people, particularly male leadership in amongst the Tories, that they're going to be done with this guy because, again, judgment. They're dumping Boris Johnson because they feel like he can't lead. And the economic direction that they want to go right now with Britain, they don't feel that Boris Johnson can take them there. I would be very surprised if he had much of a future, to be honest with you. Feeling like there are a lot of economic problems with Great Britain right now, and the feeling with those cards is that the kind of financial sophistication needed to fix everything that's wrong with Great Britain is beyond the scope of anything that Boris Johnson would be capable of handling. And that's basically how it looks. Okay. I want to look at Bill Barr now because people had asked, what's going to be with Bill Barr? Is he going to be prosecuted? I can't believe what he's gotten away with. But let's just check out Bill Barr. Actually, I think for whatever reason I always use the King of Pentacles for him because I use the King of Swords for Donald Trump. So we'll use the King of Pentacles and just see what is going on with Bill Barr. He feels like he's riding into victory. You know, he's moving through smoother waters, and then this guy's a religious zealot. You get the impression that he's completely convinced that he's on the right side, that there are certain things that need to be sealed, certain things that the general public doesn't need to know, certain things that they don't need to know about the Attorney General, ongoing investigations. He's got that Hierophant as his base card. So this is someone who truly is a true believer, basically. Same as Donald Trump, very intolerant, very, very refusing to be open to any feedback from anybody else. It's that same closed-mindedness. There is a Lover card coming in here, though, which denotes some kind of an agreement. Thinking of moving on, and then we can see here in the 4th house a 5 of Swords. There's the Justice. He feels like there were specific things that he was brought in to do, which was to clean up this mess or to cover up this investigation, and that it will be taken out of the hands of the Justice Department, which probably would be a good thing for Bill Barr. You can see that 5 of Swords moving in with the Justice card. There is a feeling of anger or frustration by Donald Trump that he can't just order Barr to do whatever he likes. And that frustration that everything is too slow as Barr pounds away at the Justice Department, creating the kind of justice that Donald Trump thinks he should get. There's a frustration there. You really get the impression from these cards, and when you look at Bill Barr, that he doesn't feel that the general public needs to know certain things about private investigations. That seems to be his argument. And the need for security regarding certain documents may be the reason why the general public and Congress are not allowed to see certain things, because they have to do with ongoing investigations. That seems to be the sticking point or argument that Barr is making, and we're just going to have to see what happens. But the Empress is the outcome, and that would suggest that there's probably going to be a document leak relatively soon, or a bunch of stuff is about to get dumped. I'm going to go ahead now, do one more throw. I just want to check and see what's going on with SCOTUS, and whether or not SCOTUS is going to start releasing tax documents to SDNY and also to Congress. I just want to check on if they're going to side with the president on these cases or with Congress and SDNY. Also the release of grand jury information. I just want to check. So one of the main people that has a problem with this is RBG, believe it or not, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Her concerns are that anytime a person gets into the White House that the opposing group doesn't like, this can be a precedent where we can just start hounding them for all kinds of documents. So it can't be, the law cannot be used to harass or terrorize somebody. So that is RBG's position. They have to be able to show that there's a reason why they want the documents to come out. Not everyone's going to be happy. They're going to do due diligence. You can see the Magician card as their base, but there's a 5 of Cups there, so there's a feeling like nobody's going to be happy with their results. Heartbreak. And what crosses it, being walled in, a feeling that no one's going to be happy with their decision. Here she is, Yehuda, the perfect judge. Nice. And a new beginning. This decision is going to be made without any emotionalism regarding Trump. They will be fair to him. It's not the function of SCOTUS is not to be vengeful. It's to simply make as unemotional a decision as possible where this president is concerned. And I think we're going to be impressed by that objectivity. But we can see a star here. So there's a feeling, action, reaction with the president that they are going to be fair with him. Some stuff is probably going to be released, but it has to be for the sole purpose of an ongoing investigation. That would be legitimate. But anything but just randomly releasing stuff for people's entertainment is not going to happen. Any documents that have a legitimate reason for being requested because of an ongoing investigation, yeah, they're probably going to get those documents. But anything beyond that, I think would be questionable at this point, just because there has to be a legal component, and I understand why they're doing that, because it protects future presidents as well. All right, so those are the remotes and the tarot card blitz. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're trying to get in for a reading with me, absolutely, I'd love to read for you. You can go to tarotwithwhimsy.com, and we'll see you next time. Peace out, everyone. Bye.